So, episode 3 of The Last of Us just came out and I watched it. My initial reaction is this is definitely the worst episode so far. I thought it started out strong, but then it just ended up feeling just like a padding episode. Yeah, I think they mishandled this quite a lot. So I thought the story of Bill and Frank is nicely done at the beginning. And that this is the kind of addition to the story that I like. Fleshing things out, showing things off a bit more in detail, which you can do in a show that you're just watching rather than playing. Because we all hear about how Kojima gets put to task over the amount of cutscenes he has and the length of the cutscenes. So you can do this in a show, but perhaps not in a game. However, it ended up being an episode about the life and times of Bill and Frank, which was not what I was expecting, and I don't think it really added anything to the show. In fact, I thought it took away from the show. So what happened in this episode? Well, turns out Bill was a prepper, which I think we kind of knew anyway, in the game. He was this prepper, and the Fedra, it turns out, have been rounding up people from towns, and then if the local quarantine areas were too full, they would then execute them into mass graves. So people have been here, which I don't think we knew about. I don't remember hearing about this before. Which definitely puts you on the side of the Fireflies. Because it was always implied that Federal were bad, but other than them hunting down Joel and Ellie, who did murder a bunch of Fedra. And for all they know, we were Firefly terrorists. Again, they probably shouldn't shoot first, ask questions later, but that's what they were doing. Well, other than that, it was kind of implied that they were bad, but we never really saw it in the game. And this in the series we've seen hanging, public hangings, public executions, and we have seen them now rounding up people, whether they're infected or not, and just putting them into mass graves. So we're definitely painting the Fedra as, Fireflies good, Fedra bad. That's how we're painting it in the show. There's no shades of grey. We're not seeing Fedra do good things.
Bombs, yeah, I keep forgetting to use a bomb.
And largely we're not seeing Fireflies doing bad things other than bombings, but we don't know what they're bombing, or we're not really seeing the casualties or the collateral damage of the bombings. And then Bill starts to fence off and board up his town to protect it for himself. And eventually Frank ends up falling into one of Bill's traps. Bill finds him and lets him out, tests him, because he stole a Fedra infection test kit thing. And then he feeds Frank, and then Frank plays piano for him a little bit. And yeah, they fall for each other. And then they stay for each other for a long time. And then somehow they find Tess on the radio, and Tess and Joel show up for a dinner party. And Joel warns Bill about raiders out there, and he needs to protect himself better. Then they get attacked by raiders. And then Bill wants to ask Joel for help, but they end up fighting off the raiders anyway. And then cut way in the future, 10 years. Frank is in a wheelchair, and he wants to end his life, but Bill can't do that. So they go out together instead. in each other's arms. And then Joel and Ellie show up, read a letter telling them that they're now dead, that Bill and Frank are dead, and that they're welcome to their stuff. And then Joel and Ellie leave. The end. Oh, they got a car, so they leave in a car. The end. Yeah. What the hell? What kind of episode is that? They completely remove all of the good stuff in the game from Bill and Ellie, and like the messed up storyline of Bill. And it's weird because it turns out that Tess and Joel have been together for at least 13 years. And the fact that they went off to like a dinner party at some random person's house probably means they were together for a while before that then, too. So Joel has basically been with Tess for the majority of the time after the outbreak, after losing Sarah. Which seems so weird considering how they interact with each other in the show and in the game. But in some ways it makes sense, because in the game, Tess did say, even though she doesn't know how Joel feels about her, like if she meant anything to him, that she would take Ellie to the Fireflies and find a cure. Now he does one part of that really well, but then doesn't on the next part, even though he's known her for 13 years and Ellie for, like, realistically, he knows her for 6 months. Because the first 6 months of escorting Ellie around, he's trying to get rid of her all the time and doesn't open up to her at all. So how much of a bond they have in the first 6 months? Probably negligible. And then in the last 6 months, kind of warming up to her. And it's like... But then you spit in the face of Tess. You spit on Tess's memory because you won't finish off the last of her, like, of what she wanted to happen for someone you barely know, because you got psychological issues and you're transferring your messed up psychology, your messed up brain onto this girl you don't really know. Like, it's so messed up. And like, it just feels like everything about Ellie and Joel's bond is a lie. And it feels like everything to do with Tess and Joel is a lie. And it's even worse, the fact that they were together for 13 years. Like, to Joel, Ellie is basically just a placeholder. She's just this insert for Sarah. And if, like, I don't doubt that if she got in his way at some point, she went against him, he would just treat her like Tommy and just abandon her and ignore her. And he'd go off, not talking about his feelings, probably killing a bunch more people, until he found someone else to attach to. So, in a way, Joel is very much like the parasitic fungus, really. Just spreading around, spreading his infection. And the whole Bill and Frank story, I think that was a mistake. Like, the original had so much more of an impact. Because you didn't really think that much of it until you did. Like, Bill just talks about how you shouldn't rely on people, how you shouldn't give a damn about anyone else, so you have to rely on yourself. Because he had someone, and they made him realize that caring about someone else was a mistake. And then later on, you find that person. And it turns out Bill was right, but it's also super messed up how he found this person that he cared about. It's like, it has such impact right at that moment. Whereas Bill and Frank's story in this episode almost feels like a Hallmark episode. It's like, if Hallmark were going to do a love story in the post-apocalypse, it'd probably be like this. And you miss out on so much because Bill is supposed to be when you don't really know him, but when you get to see him and the interactions, like, Bill is supposed to come across as a bit of a dick. And then by the time you leave him, Like, you feel sympathy for him. And you realize, like, there's a reason people are the way they are in the story. And the way he is. Like, it's kind of justified. And you realize at a moment, like, there's gonna be no happy endings in this story. Like, people can't really be just happy. And I think it's kind of meaningful for the story, too. It's like someone you grew to care about ended up betraying you. I mean, I think that's pretty fitting for how this story goes. I mean, it's like poetry. It rhymes. And you miss out on so many important scenes. Like Joel being forced to rely on Ellie to save his life. That he's not just a one-man army. And he still has to depend on others. And no matter how much he just, like, uses her as his distraction, as his focal point, to distract him from Tess, to distract him from Sarah, he can't do everything alone. And that if they're going to do this, they're going to have to do this as a team. I mean, he was still a stubborn sod after this, and still didn't want to relent, even though he knew the truth in the back of his head that she needs to protect him sometimes just as much as he needs to protect her. But that's the whole point of Joel. Joel is so stubborn and so closed off. He's broken. He doesn't trust anyone. It's hard to know even if he cares about anyone other than himself. He might form some kind of attachments, but those attachments are definitely flawed. And we also miss out on the banter between Bill and Ellie, which, like, lightens up the mood from the story. And you need those moments. Otherwise, the story is just dark and depressing all the way through. So you need to have a little bit of an escape from that darkness, from that misery. Oh, what's that? Oh, we've got a copy of the letter here. Okay, excellent. So this is the letter from Bill to Joel. Okay, let's have a look. Hey Joel, I only liked living when I found someone to save. Hint, hint, Joel. Joel, save her in the hospital. Okay, yeah, yep. I think we understand that. Yeah. Oh, there's a PS. I have stuff, so you don't need to go into the dangerous locations like the school and see a cool infected, as that would cost us too much to make. PPS, I also have the car battery from the idea we had in the game, but I am dead. However, it was the reason that you started all of this in the first place, instead of mutual goals, like finding guns, because you wanted to sell the guns. So you kind of got Tess killed. You know, after 13 years of being together, you need to try to act sad now. Oh, you go kind of look constipated for a few seconds. Well, I guess that's good enough for me. I'm glad we didn't find Frank hanging around. Signed, Bill. Oh, that was a nice letter there from Bill. Yeah. So, it was an interesting episode that felt just like padding. I mean, it started off okay. I mean, it would have been better if they showed how Frank and Bill met. They immediately cut to Joel and Ellie going into that area. Joel triggering some kind of trap, and then Ellie having to save him. Bill finds both of them. Then they have a bit of banter. He helps them a little bit, and then they find the car battery, or he knows where a car battery is,
So I guess
and then they go off to find the car battery, and it's exactly where he has it or something. And or maybe it isn't, and along the way they find it, just like in the game, they find Frank. What happened to Frank? Because it starts off with, Frank, you met Frank? Oh, we had a bit of an argument.
Crumbling up.
Because in the game, Joel had never met Frank. So Joel, Bill, and Ellie find Frank with the car battery, and in the end they had in the game.
That was close.
And I guess instead of pushing the car, it just drives off. Would have worked better than this. We didn't even get the magazine. The sticky magazine. Where's your references, series? Where's your references? And then in the next episode, they're going to meet up with the Raiders. From the trailer, it looks like, well, preview trailer, whatever it is, looks like it will be more faithful than this episode. Yeah, hopefully this is the worst episode in the series. Yeah, less of this. More like the first two episodes. Less of this. So far, the second episode, it has been my favorite. Like, if I was going to score them, I'd probably give, like, if, like, 1 is awful, I don't want to watch it anymore. 10 is, like, the greatest thing ever. 5 is, like, fine. It's fine. I'd probably give the first episode a 6. Mostly because, like, not a lot happens and they change weird stuff. And then, like, an 8 for the second episode. And probably a 4 for this one. Because I think it started off, I thought it started off good and then it's like, goes into, like, definitely feels like a padding episode. Like, I was definitely thinking about, like, oh, okay, it's getting a bit long now, and then, oh, the episode's over. Well, that's my thoughts on episode 3 of The Last of Us. Yeah. Let's hope the next episode's better. That's all I can say.